So about pre and post processing commands, right, in the source level and the target level, right? So over here we have already discussed that, but I can again show you. I'll take this SQL off. If I go to this, right, and then if I go to advanced, oh, I have not selected this. So let me select. Yeah. Okay. So over here in the pre-SQL and post-SQL, we can have those SQL queries, right, which needs to be executed on those database objects which are inside this particular DB, or this connection has access to it, right? We can't have any other SQL queries in the other databases. We can only have the SQL queries executed in those DBs which can be accessed using this particular connection, right? If this connection is schema specific, then those objects needs to be present in the same schema. Usually we create the DB connections without a schema details, right? But in some of the organizations, right, require to create multiple connections to same database as per the schemas, right? So in that case, whatever pre-SQL and post-SQL we are providing over here, those needs to be in line with what the connection properties are. Okay. So usually, right, what we do is, say for example, whenever I'm pulling data from a particular table, right, and that table is not having indexes, right, so we can create those indexes in pre-SQL, and then we can drop those indexes once we once we, I would say, read the data and push it to target. Once that is done, right, because we know that sequencing will kind of increase the speed of reading the data from the source, right? So that is one use case, or I would say common use case, where we can create the indexes, right, using the pre-SQL. Or what we can do is, like, in pre-SQL target also we can drop them, not a problem, right? Other thing, right, whenever we have these pre-SQL and post-SQL in the target, right? So if I go to target again, target tab, here again I'll have to select the connection table. In the target transformation, pre and post SQL, what we can do is, it is not only about sequences, we can do like anything out of that, right? But then again, in the target, again, if I have like sequences, right, one thing which we always observe is, if we have indexes defined on the target table, though indexes would help in reading the data from that particular table, but if we have indexes on a particular table where we are writing the data, indexes can even degrade the performance of writing, right? So in that case, for target, what we can do is, if I again go to advanced, again we have pre and post SQL. Here in the pre SQL, we can drop those indexes, get the data loaded first, right? And then in the post SQL, we can rebuild the indexes, right? So that will be, right, an effective way, right, or most, I would say, cost effective way to do the processing, right? Now most of the time, right, the tables which we use, right, they may or may not have indexes, but then usually we don't do these things, right? But when it comes to having like a table which is like long timer, right, where we have like a lot of data, that table is not really truncate load table, but it is kind of a persistent data table. In that case, data volume may increase gradually, right, over the period of like 5 6 7 years or 10 years, right? We'll see lot of data is there, right? And such tables, right, initially it will be all good, right? And then we'll push the data and all. Suddenly we will start realizing that the tables or the ETLs which are loading the data, maybe that can be a daily load or weekly load, we are facing some performance challenges in terms of mapping execution. That mapping elapsed time is like really getting increased because the data which we are accessing in the source and target also getting increased day by day, right? So that time these these techniques will be like really helpful, right? So you can build the indexes if you don't want to have them persistent, right? In the source table, in the pre and post SQL of your source, and in the target, when I really want to retain my indexes, I don't want to drop them, right? Or I don't want to just create them for my ETL, but for other purpose also, because that table might get consumed by a lot of other processes, not only the Informatica Cloud, right? In that case, I really want to have those indexes on that table. So in that case, in the pre-SQL, I can drop those indexes so that data writing in that table will become faster. And then once the data is written, once it is committed, right, then we can use the post SQL to rebuild the indexes so that whenever I'm reading data, right, or any other procedure or any other event is trying to read data from the target table, that again data reading will be faster because we have indexes. So those things can also be implemented over here. uh, Apart from the indexes creating, dropping and all, we can have any other table to fire some query on, right? Maybe I do have some table used in between, or if I'm trying to use that table for my another mapping, right, next set of mapping, and I want to still do some calculation, or still do some, not calculation, but still want to kind of delete that table or truncate the partition, right? That case also we can use this pre and post sequence, right? Whenever so a particular table, if it is kind of partition, right, and I want to truncate not that particular whole table, right, but truncate the partition. So for that truncating partition also, that particular SQL statement can be executed over here. And then once that partition is truncated, we'll push the data. There might not be anything in the post SQL, just the pre SQL, right, before we start writing data to target. So there could be these various operations which are performing on the database. Now most of the time these operations will be on those tables which are used as a source and target, right? But as I mentioned, right, we can even have some operations performed on the related tables as well within the same database and schema, which are accessible by whatever source and target connections we have used. If I want to kind of execute something on those related tables within the same database, that can also be provided as a pre or post SQL source, or pre and post SQL target. Okay, so that is how we can use this. Some cases I have experienced that some databases will not have truncate privileges, right? They are a bit secure database where DBAs don't want to have anything like any mishap happened on the data, right? In that case, truncate table option, even if we select, right, that is not really enabled in the target level. And that time what we'll have is the mapping will fail because we are using this truncate table, and then Informatica user might not have truncate privileges, right? That is also in one of the projects I have seen. So that time if I still want to kind of delete the data from my target table and load the fresh data, right? So that time also we can use this pre SQL. So that time we can use this pre-SQL to delete the data from that particular table, and then write the data again, right? Write the fresh data again. But one thing, if it is really a mandatory norm by the databases to not performing any truncate, right? In that case, we can use the delete statement, right? If the truncate option is available in the database level, right, then that is the most preferred way, because we know that truncate is like really really quick and delete takes time. And in the long run also, whenever I am continuously firing the delete query on my target table, it would degrade the table health, right? So that is something we have experienced over the period of time. That, and then again DB has also suggested that if you are using delete statement frequently on the table, then that might degrade the health of the table, right? So that also we need to keep in mind, right? So this is again like Short summary about how we can utilize this pre and post SQL source and pre and post SQL target operations in your scenarios, in your projects. You may even find or encounter more options to enable these options, these features, so accordingly you can use them. This is about this module number 8, where we have these pre and post sequels in the source and target level.